Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 208. We will be reading the story All the Goodness Gone from Tea. Well, that sounds kind of sad. It is the fourth story in the fourth book of the Japanese Family Storehouse, a 333-year-old book from feudal Japan with a bunch of little anecdotes about money or about business or about life, and it's all just generally money focused. So we read these just to show that people were dealing with these same issues 300 years ago. Some stuff stays the same. Some of the values and principles stay the same. Others, not so much. They change. All the goodness gone from tea. 1 gold bankin a day. That, they say, is the average toll levied on cargoes landed at the port of Tsuruga in Echizen. The daily toll on freighters up and down the river Yodo is no greater. Tsuruga is a place where wholesalers of every kind flourish, but its period of greatest activity is in the autumn, when rows of temporary shops are erected for the annual market. The streets take on a truly metropolitan air, and to look at the women strolling at ease amid crowds of men and bearing themselves with feminine grace and restraint, you might think that a new Kyoto had sprung up in the north. This is also the season for traveling players to converge on the town, and for pickpockets to gather in strength. But people have learnt to keep their wits about them. They have altogether abandoned the practice of hanging valuable ornaments from their belts, and money wallets are thrust far out of reach in the folds of their kimono. These are hard times indeed, even if the brotherhood of thieves can no longer make a dishonest penny in a crowd the size of this. But honesty still reaps its reward, and a skillful tradesman, humbly inviting buyers to inspect his wares, treating each customer with courtesy and respect, need not despair of making a livelihood. On the outskirts of the town lived a man called Kobashi no Risiku. With no wife or children to support, his only care each day was to provide a living for himself. In his approach to this, he displayed considerable ingenuity. He had built a smart portable tea server, and early every morning, before the town was astir, he set the contraption across his shoulders and set out for the market streets. His sleeves were strapped back with bright ribbon. He wore formal divided skirts, tightly bound at each ankle, and the picture of efficiency, and on his head he set a quaint eboshi cap. He might have passed for the god Ibisu himself. When he cried, "Ibisu tea! A morning cup of Ibisu tea!" the superstitious merchants felt obliged to buy a drink for luck, even if they were not at all thirsty, and from force of habit they tossed him 12 zenny for each cup. His luck never changed, day after day, and before long he had enough capital to open a retail tea shop and do business on a larger scale. Later he came to employ a great number of assistants, and he rose to be a leading merchant in the wholesale trade. So far, as a man who had made a fortune by his own efforts, he had earned nothing but admiration and respect. He even received and rejected requests from influential citizens to marry their daughters. "I shall take no wife before I have 10,000 ryo, he used to say, calculating that matrimony might involve inconvenient expenses at the moment. There is plenty of time left before I pass 40. For the time being, he found sufficient pleasure in watching his money grow, and he lived on in solitary bachelorhood. As the time passed, he became less scrupulous in his business methods. Sending his assistants to all parts of Ichu and Ichigo provinces, he bought up used tea leaves on the pretext that they were needed for Kyoto dyes, and he mixed these with the fresh leaves in his stock. People could see no difference, and his sales brought tremendous profits. For a period, at least, his household enjoyed great prosperity, but heaven, so it would seem, did not approve. Ryusuke became stark mad, gratuitously revealing his private affairs to the whole province, babbling of tea dregs, wherever he went. People cut him dead. They would have no dealings with a man whose fortune was so disreputably made. Even when he summoned a doctor, no one would come. Left to himself, he grew steadily weaker, till he had not even the strength to drink hot or cold water. Once, toward the end, he begged tearfully for a mouthful of tea to cleanse him of worldly thoughts. But, although they held a cup before him, a barrier of retribution was firmly settled in his throat. Then, scarcely able to breathe, he bade his servant bring the money from the strong room and lay it about his body from head to foot. "To think that all this gold and silver will be someone else's when I die," he sobbed. "What a sad and dreadful thought that is." He clasped the money to his breast. He clenched it between his teeth. His tears trailed crimson streaks across his ashen face, and he needed only horns to be the image of a white devil. In his madness, he leapt wildly about the room, a shadow of his former self, and even though he sank down again and again in exhaustion, no one would hold him still for long. He revived and started searching for his money once more. 35 times he repeated this performance. But then even his own servants could find no more pity for him. They were terrified, and one by one they gathered in the kitchen, grasping sticks and clubs to defend themselves. They waited for 2 or 3 days, and when no further sounds could be heard, they rose together and peeped into the room. Ryusuke lay there with staring eyes, still clutching his money. Nearly dead with fright, they bundled his body, just as it was, into a palanquin and set off for the cremation ground. It was a mild spring day, but suddenly black clouds swirled into view. Sheets of rain sent torrents racing across the flat fields. Gusts of wind snapped, withered branches from the trees, and lightning lit the skies. Perhaps it was the lightning which stole away the corpse, even before they had a chance to burn it. At all events, nothing remained now except the empty palanquin. With their own eyes, they had witnessed the terrible truth that the world of the senses is a world of fire. They turned and fled, and every one of them became a devout follower of the Buddha. Later, all of Ryusuke's distant relatives were summoned and asked to settle the division of the deceased's property. But when they heard that what had happened, they shook with fright, and not one of them would take so much as an odd chopstick. They told the servants to split the property amongst themselves, but the servants showed no enthusiasm at all. On the contrary, they quit the house, and they even left behind the articles of clothing which Ryusuke had given them during their service. Since the laity, trained in the world of greed, had shown themselves so stupid, there was nothing for it but to sell the whole property at a loss and present the proceeds to the local temple. The priests were delighted with their windfall. The money could hardly be used for sacred purposes, so they went up to Kyoto, where they had the time of their lives with boy actors, and brought smiles of happiness to the faces of Higashiyama brothel keepers. Okay, that was kind of an awkward paragraph. Strangely enough, even after his death, Ryusuke made regular rounds of the various wholesale stores to collect his dues on previous credit sales. The proprietors knew well enough that he was dead, but from sheer terror at seeing him in his old form, they settled their accounts at once, without attempting to give him short weight. The news of his reappearance caused wide alarm. They called Ryusuke's old house Ghost Mansion, and as nobody would take it even as a gift, it was left to crumble and become a wilderness. It is easy enough, as may be observed, to make money by shady practices, pawning other people's property, dealing in counterfeit goods, plotting with confidence tricksters to catch a wife with a large dowry, borrowing piecemeal from the funds of innumerable temples and defaulting wholesale on a plea of bankruptcy, joining gangs of gambling sharks, hawking quack medicines to country bumpkins, terrorizing people into buying paltry ginseng roots, conniving with your wife to extort money from her lovers, trapping pet dogs for skins, charging to adopt unweaned babies and starving them to death, collecting the hair from drowned corpses, all of these are ways of supporting life. But if we live by subhuman means, we might as well never have had the good fortune to be born human. Evil leaves its mark deep in a man's heart, so that no kind of villainy seems evil to him any longer. And when he has reached that stage, he is indeed in a pitiful state of degradation. The only way to be a man is to earn your livelihood by means not unfitted to a man. Life, after all, is a dream of little more than 50 years. Well, hopefully a little more than 50 years. And whatever one does for a living, it is not difficult to stay so brief a course. All right, well, I think that speaks for itself. You will turn into a zombie if you are dishonest in business. And you don't have much time on Earth, so don't be a douchebag. That is it for 5-Year Club video number 208. All the goodness gone from tea. And once again, that is the fourth story from the fourth book of the Japanese Family Storehouse. Have a fabulous evening.